Brian Claypool with us right now, civil rights attorney, a good study of these sort of events and what they could mean. Brian, good to have you. We're learning that this judge is open to the idea of having a master kind of go through everything. But what does that mean? Let's say she goes ahead and approves that. What would that person do?
Yeah, hey, Neil, great to be back with you. I think the judge is doing the right thing. I think she's going to honor her preliminary decision and appoint a special master. Why should she do that? Because there are documents that are protected by the attorney-client privilege. And, Neil, in the real world, without a search warrant, how this would happen is a subpoena, for example, would go to Trump's office, right? His lawyers, Neil, would then be able to go through all the documents and present to a judge what's called a privilege log. You go through every single document. Hey, this document's subject to attorney-client privilege, and here's why. The DOJ would say why it's not. Then a judge rules on that before the documents are turned over. Here, the converse happened. The FBI just went in and raided everything. So this is absolutely necessary to preserve the integrity of any attorney-client documents.
So attorney-client privilege for whom? Let's say we learn now from the DOJ that it has reviewed a lot of these sensitive documents and concluded that some are of that description, the possible attorney-client privilege here. Does that mean that they never get out, will never get out?
Yeah, great question. By the way, the attorney-client privilege goes to the client. So the client here would be President Trump. So he's got communications with a lawyer regarding some subject matter, right?
But he wants them all out, right?
So
his argument, I'm sorry to drop on you, my friend, but his argument was release everything. So this, what the DOJ seems to be saying here, this would be a case where honoring attorney-client privilege, it's in his interest for them not to.
Well, look, I'm not sure I agree with what Trump's saying then, because the whole point of a special master is to ensure that documents that are not arguably classified are returned back to Trump. For example, what if there's communications between his wife, there's something regarding his son in these documents, there's something regarding, you know, his other kids. I mean, these documents need to be returned to President Trump. But look, at the end of the day, why are we even talking about this? Because there was a sham affidavit, in my opinion, that was used to go raid Trump's residence and to get every document possible. And Neil, one point I want to make is the reason I say that is because it took the FBI 4 months from the referral from the National Archive Records Administration to even sit down and look through the first 15 boxes, right? And then they charged in there to get the rest of these records based on some alleged obstruction. Point I want to make is you can't allege obstruction because there has to be an ongoing investigation that Trump's aware of. He wasn't even aware that there was any kind of criminal investigation going on. So you can't argue, the DOJ can't argue that Trump obstructed justice. He wasn't even aware of anything.
Now, they argue, or that this comes down to documents he had at his home in Florida that he shouldn't have had, and his office and team had said anything that the government wanted, the archives wanted, they had that already given. So something happened, either that was miscommunicated or to hear the government tell it, the former president and his people lied. Is that what it comes down to? And is that really a criminal offense, or is it, if you misrepresent what you said to be the case, it doesn't matter whether you're a former president?
Yeah, well, it gets back to my point. If Trump was negotiating with the DOJ, that's not a formal investigation. He voluntarily turned over 15 boxes, right? This doesn't make any sense. This affidavit is a bunch of garbage.
I know where you're coming from, but he had said none of these were, sensitive data was in there. He said that he had declassified them, so as a president he could do that. Right. But that some of these documents they were looking for, especially when the National Archives was sort of, begging and pleading and actually demanding for him to hand this over. It said it's already been there, done that, handed it over. So if that's a misrepresentation, is that if it's intentional and you lied about it, is that a big deal or no?
I don't think it is because, again, I don't believe Trump realized that there was some type of criminal investigation going on. He was just having a negotiation. Obstruction of justice occurs when you make a false representation during a criminal investigation. So the million-dollar question is, was there a criminal investigation going on when they questioned Trump? I would argue absolutely not.
But what if there wasn't? What if there wasn't? If he had documents he shouldn't have had, said that he didn't have them, and he did have them, and they were mixed with other personal papers and magazine clippings. That doesn't sound right, but what do you make of that?
That's not criminal, though, Neil. Look at the two laws cited by this FBI agent in his affidavit. And by the way, he's not an attorney, but he cites two federal laws in this affidavit. One of them requires willful behavior on the part of Trump. That's really hard to prove. Is Trump really trying to hide something? The second element is that he's doing this to try to disseminate or injure the country. That's really what blows my mind here. I mean, how many months have gone by since NARA got these documents? The sky hasn't fallen. Nothing bad has happened to the world. And I really think that's the crux of this, right?
But what
and here's another thing, Neil.
What if they fell into the wrong hands, or he copied said documents? I mean, wasn't that what this was originally all about, to track them down and say some were very sensitive? National Archives had relayed that these were sensitive enough that they continued petitioning the Biden White House. So where does this all go, I guess I'm asking?
Yeah, another good question. Again, if that's the case, Trump has confidential documents, they possibly compromise national security. I would argue that he hasn't done this in a willful manner. He just got a bunch of documents at his place, and that to me rises to the level of being careless on his part and negligent on his part. But that to me does not rise to he's willfully concealing documents to allow them to be disseminated to an enemy to injure our country. Or, for example, he's hiding these documents from everybody to obstruct justice. I just don't think it rises to the level of a crime. And I think they just should retrieve the documents, get them back, give him his documents back that are personal to him, and move on, and not make this a political ambush, Neil.
All right. It just is odd to me, and you're the lawyer and expert here, but when Hillary Clinton was charged with doing the same thing, you know, the Republican side and Donald Trump himself had all but called for her execution. I'm just wondering, you know, I understand politics and how it works, but it's just going to linger on, I guess. We'll watch it closely. Brian, thank you very much. Brian Claypool on all of this. Take a look at